Organize, organize, organize. Come on, let's organize, organize, organize. This is the verse. Workers from the South are here to say the time is right, let's organize today. We're tired of being used and exploited. Get up, stand up, wake up, we'll be doing it. Oh, we're going to organize, organize, organize. We're going to organize, organize, organize. We've got to organize, organize, organize. Come on, let's organize, organize, organize. Another verse. Not doing it for praise, glory, or fame. We're not doing it so others will know our name. We're doing it because we want to make it plain. That we'll fight to make the boss do the right thing. Oh, we're going to organize, organize, organize. We're going to organize, organize, organize. We've got to organize, organize, organize. Come on, let's organize, organize, organize. We're going to organize, organize, organize. We've got to organize, organize, organize. We've got to organize, organize, organize. Come on, let's organize, organize, organize.
Everybody's wide awake.
Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the SVA webinar series. My name is Joshua Vincent. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern Vision Alliance. I'm joining you from Raleigh, North Carolina, repping the Bull City as well. The birthplace, Raleigh, North Carolina, of course, the birthplace of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was founded in 1960 at Shaw University by Ella Baker. I want to wish everybody first a very happy Black History Month. Thank you to everyone for taking the time out this afternoon, this evening to join this exciting episode of the Southern Vision webinar series. The Southern Vision Alliance right now is working very hard to build a movement in the South. Southern Vision Alliance supports groups that are led by directly impacted people to work for social and racial and environmental justice, along with gender equity, LGBTQ rights, and education justice in the US South. In 2022, we are hosting a year-long video podcast webinar series aimed at sharing perspectives from movements for change in the US and the global South. Throughout these conversations, we're going to be discussing challenges and opportunities, to ground our understanding of historic and current conditions, explore strategies, and put forward bold visions for transformation and to build people's power. We hope these exchanges are going to be helpful to plant powerful seeds for frontline organizing. To honor Black History Month, we have with us some incredible Black Southern labor leaders who are part of the Southern Workers Assembly. We're going to talk about the history of Black worker organizing and Black-led worker organizing, and not just the history, but we're also going to talk about what is happening right now and why it's important for everybody to be involved in these struggles. I want to also, before we kind of get fully into the webinar here, I want to just kind of a little bit of housekeeping real quick. I want to invite folks to submit your questions and comments in the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen. If you do submit something, please include your name, your pronouns, and where you're from. And then also, folks that are online and other platforms, this is being live streamed and live tweeted with hashtags. So the hashtags that we're using for this conversation today are hashtag Black History Month, hashtag Southern Vision, hashtag Organize the South, and hashtag Workers' Power. All right. So, like I said, today we're being joined by four really incredible leaders from the South. Our first person that we're mentioning or we're going to have up is Angaza Laughinghouse, who's the former president of North Carolina Public Workers Union, UE 150, and the founding member of Fruit of Labor World Cultural Center, and an incredible baritone. You all will hear a little bit later. We also have Kaya Taylor, organizing fellow of SWA, an Amazon worker, a grad student at American University, and co-chair of Housing Working Group in the Triangle chapter of DSA. And we also, third, we have Sakia Royal, who's the president of the North Carolina Public Service Worker Union, UE 150, UE Local 150, food service assistant at O'Berry Center in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And finally, Rebecca Gross Alford, a registered nurse in interventional radiology at Mission Hospital. She's an active member of her union, National Nurses Organizing Committee. But for now, we're going to start up with Angaza. Angaza, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
My computer.
All right. How y'all doing?
Doing great, doing great.
I gotta acknowledge also that I'm also a member of Black Workers for Justice. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary coming up, and we're gonna ask all of you to engage, but wanna just try to answer a basic question. You know, what are the conditions that exist, the historical conditions that exist that make it so challenging in terms of trying to organize unions and workplace movement in the South?
Mm-hmm.
No way I can address that question unless we make a statement of fact that Black history, Black labor history is at the center of American history and labor history.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, Black labor is left out of the whole equation for US labor history. They usually start with the founding of labor organizations in the late 1800s. They don't start with the resistance and the fight by slave labor, Black slave labor, in terms of fighting for their freedom, their basic human rights. So want to just state how those conditions, that just the whole history, the whole political, social, economic, historical reasons why it's so hard to organize here in the South. As we all know that that slavery has always been one of the main institutions that has super exploited labor, super oppressed a whole nation of Black people. And we have to, discuss that because it continues to have its impact on organizing the South today. Mm-hmm. The question of racism, systemic racism, the question of white supremacy, the question of white privilege are all a part of the problem in terms of the challenges that has always been a part of organizing labor in the South. More importantly, we gotta, raise up the question of what role did labor play in the 1800s, late 1800s, when they were organizing labor unions? And got to state very clearly that in the late 1800s, 1875, 1883, when the AFL-CIO was formed, they excluded Black labor from their unions. Therefore, Blacks had to organize their own workplace unions, whether it was the Night of Laborers, the Black Night of Laborers in Edgecombe and Rocky Mount and other southern regions, or other Black formations like the National Negro Congress. We had to organize our own selves. So there's still this long legacy of historical conditions, which I don't want to go too deeply in, but that are still impacting why it's so challenging in the South. Because as we know, the question of organizing the South is not a workplace issue. It's a broader regional issue, community issue. Can't talk about democracy in the workplace without talking about democracy in the communities, particularly Black communities. Can't talk about challenging and fighting for the right of workers to vote under the National Labor Relations Act without talking about our access to the broader voting franchise. Very important in terms of examining these historical conditions, these economic and sociological conditions that has really stifled the labor movement. And no need to say that the labor movement has tried to organize the South. The Congress of Industrial Organizations tried Operation Dixie way back in the late 40s and 50s, and it failed. But also, we have to concede that historically, even fighting the civil rights movement, that many labor organizations did not support the fight for civil rights. There were a few, like the United Auto Workers Union with Walter Reuther. He was one of the few. But few labor unions stood up when we were fighting for those basic civil and human rights back in the 60s. Few. There's a legacy here. And it's very important that we also acknowledge the laws that were passed right after the National Labor Relations Act was passed in 1935. We got to concede that soon as we got that law, the corporations came back and lobbied for what we call the Taft-Hartley law, the law that created right to work, which undermined the organizing of unions. It undermined and weakened the organizing power of unions. And we can get into more detail as we continue to talk about, the ban on collective bargaining rights here in North Carolina and other southern states for public sector workers to have collective bargaining rights. So all of these factors played into the challenges of organizing in the South, as well as the fact that Democrats and Republicans, both here in the South, have not always supported labor unions. Just as recently as 6-7 years ago, some Democrats, when they saw labor union efforts at Nissan or Volkswagen or Mercedes or Boeing, and even Bessemer, Alabama, some Democrats did not stand up in support of the workers' right to organize unions. State governor in South Carolina was known to say that, it's a tradition here in the South. We don't want corporations with unions. That was a Democrat who made that statement. In Tennessee and Alabama, I always said that Democrats are usually Dixiecrats. Many of them are very conservative, and they don't really fully stand with unions when it comes to our efforts to organize and build power. So I want to leave it right there for starters in terms of some of the many challenges that we have in terms of organizing the South.
Now, thank you for that recap, the historical recap. It's really important. I wanted to ask you, in relationship to the historical kind of timeline that you laid out, in your opinion, when we talk about the word labor, what does that mean to you? How does that relate to more broadly across the work that folks do in the South in particular?
Yeah, too often when people talk about labor, they're talking about just a small, minute fraction of workers who are in unions. Here in North Carolina, it's something like 1.9% of all workers. So when they talk about labor, they're talking about organized unions. They're not talking about worker organizations. They're not talking about the workers who are unorganized. They're not talking about the Fight for 15 movement. They're not talking about what we call pre-majority unions. They're not talking about workplace organizations, advocates. They're not talking about the National Nurses, the National Domestic Workers Union. They're not talking about all these other workers, and they're usually people of color, immigrants, farm workers, essential workers, cafeteria workers. They're not in unions. So to us, when we talk about labor, we're talking about the unorganized, we're talking about the unions themselves, and we're talking about the non-traditional worker organizations that exist.
I find that really interesting because I know in the mid 1930s when Social Security was passed, the decision to leave out domestic and farm workers and the inclusion of that was largely drawn off of race, because of race, not to include Black folks in that ability to kind of get access to that. And so
farm workers too.
Right. And so when we talk about the kind of strategic legislation and laws that have been put in place to kind of limit the ability of Southern workers to be organized, whether it be through collective bargaining, et cetera, it's not surprising to me that a lot of the same tactics are kind of put in place. I would like to hear from you, for folks that maybe are not maybe on this call, but folks that might be catching this podcast and other or webinar and other kind of clips on YouTube or whatever. Can you explain a little bit to folks about what collective bargaining is and why it's important to labor?
Who's that question directed to?
You, yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought
Yeah.
I know there's other folks.
It's just me and you right now, yeah.
Folks on the panel, capable of answering that question. But as we know, collective bargaining is essentially the right of workers to sit down with their managers, their bosses, and negotiate the terms and conditions and wages of their employment. In short, don't want to give a legalistic definition, but if we can keep it right about there in the middle of the road, I think everyone understands that's power. When workers can negotiate as equals, sitting across the table. I've been in many negotiations since I've worked for many unions over the years. Textile workers unions, CWA, ASME, the American Federation of State County Municipal Employees. It's a powerful tool. And the South has always tried to undermine that with their Jim Crow laws, segregation, and denying us that basic right to vote. So therefore, we did not have the opportunity to vote for the strong labor laws that many states have in the Northeast, Midwest, and California, Florida. They all have collective bargaining, by the way, for their public sector workers. And some of them even have strong collective bargaining laws for their farm workers and other workers. But as you know, we got to fight for that. And that's what the Southern Workers Assembly is trying to do, build that alliance in the and build those workplace committees so we can take up that fight in a better way.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. So I think another follow-up I have is, just from your experience, I know you're at the Food and Labor Community Center. You have a massive archive there. We were talking about before we started live. And so I think this is also an appropriate question. What are some of the historical conditions that have made labor organizing especially challenging in the U.S. South? And then, in relationship to, well, let's stop there. Like, what are some of the challenges that have made it, or the conditions that have made labor organizing significantly challenging in the U.S. South?
As I stated earlier, there's no way you can talk about the challenges without talking about the legacy of slave labor and how that disenfranchised us, not in terms of just the workplace, but also in our communities and in the broader society. It's disenfranchised us. It's disempowered us. So that's very important to acknowledge. But also, I think the other challenges is oftentimes in the South, a large percentage of the workers that need to be organized are in rural areas. And this is rural, in these rural areas, like, so for instance, we have a plant down near Rocky Mount, it's near Tarboro. It's called Rocky Mount Diesel Engine Plant. There's lots of these big, huge factories when you ride around in the southern region, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, meaning the workers are isolated from community organizations. They're isolated from the kind of organizations that we have in the larger urban areas. So that's a second challenge. I think the third challenge is this agricultural economy. As you know, the South, most states, including North Carolina, the #1 industry is agriculture. We keep forgetting that. You know, most of us live in these larger cities, and I guess for a good reason that we want to live in the larger cities. And we got to look at the agricultural nature and the rural nature of many workers, and particularly those areas where they build. Like, we know that a lot of auto parts plants have located or relocated here in the South.
Mhm.
And we know also that they're in rural areas. It's harder to organize in those areas. Recently, in Bessemer, Alabama, there was an attempt to organize Amazon. Don't forget, they weren't in Birmingham, Alabama. They were in Bessemer, out in the rural area. Always harder to organize in the rural areas where there's fewer jobs, fewer job opportunities, fewer chances to make even a pittance of a living than it is in the larger urban areas where there's more, job opportunities. That has been the third factor, I think, that makes it challenging for organizing the South. And also there's the question of white privilege, white skin privilege. It still plays its, ugly hand. As we know, in some of the places I've worked, and some folks say, with your background, laughing at you, mean you worked in those places? I said, certainly I worked in those places. I was trying to organize them. I'm an organizer. And by boring into those workplaces, you get a better feel for all the different factors that make it very challenging for workers to organize, particularly papers. We have lots of independent papers, progressive papers, newspapers, and communication channels in the larger urban areas. That doesn't exist in many of the smaller rural areas.
Yeah.
So all these things are helpful in terms of trying to take on the challenges of organizing in the Southern region.
Mm-hmm. So, I know we've got a couple of minutes left here. I wanted to maybe ask you, a little bit more specifically, or actually kind of bring in some other folks that are on the call with us here. I know that Sakia is here as well, and I want to bring her up if that's possible to kind of have a conversation with us about a few things around the building workers movements in the South. And so Sakia, welcome to the spotlight. I want to go ahead and just get started with you. Why is building a workers movement in the South important for the entire country? What is it? What are the implications for the entire country?
Well, as you said, here in the South, and again, hello, and thank you for having me on the panel. As you said, we have a large agricultural scene here in the South, and agriculture plays a big part, with feeding and the whole United States. And so, and having workers' rights, for the disenfranchised and Black communities and lower income communities here in the South, if we can get a fair shake for the people living here in the South, then, it would definitely benefit the entire country.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is a decent framework or at least blueprint to build off of in terms of the legacy of workers' movements in the South? That where we are right now, there's some traction?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We have done great work here in the South. Not only UE 150, which is a public service workers union, the Southern Workers Assembly has done a wonderful job bringing unions and worker organizations together and building camaraderie across the South. We have a deep, rich history of organizing because, as Mr. Angaza pointed out, the ban on collective bargaining happened, here in the South around 1959 in the height of the movement for the Black people and everything. And so what was the question? So yeah, what was I saying? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's
But
fine.
but yes, they have definitely built a great base for
Mhm.
organizing here in the South. And I think, you know, what the Black Workers for Justice has done and other organizations, other Black worker organizations, the footwork that they have put in and the, you know, the foundation that they have laid, definitely it has an opportunity to build upon.
That's great. That's great. And real quick, I want to maybe toss this both up to both Angaza and you, and then we're gonna, just for a real quick foreshadow, we're gonna take a quick kind of detour and then come back to a conversation with you, Saki, as well. But the background of the, like a little bit of a short maybe synopsis of the background of the Workers Assembly, and then maybe talk about a little bit of what the Black Belt is and why that's important to like kind of consider while we're thinking about Black labor, Black organizing traditions in the South as it relates to labor. I don't know if y'all might want to bat that off of each other at all. Sakia, do you want to jump in first, and then Angaza, you close us out for this first section?
Okay, well, so the first question was about the about Southern Workers Assembly and how we.
Yeah, just a short synopsis or a short description.
Okay, well, the Southern Workers Assembly pretty much, you know, got started with labor organizations and unions across the South, you know, pulling together and you know, we seeing the need to connect the workers in all different workplaces and work environments. And so, and we seen that we were having the same issues, fighting the same battles, having the same struggles. And so that's where the Southern Workers Assembly was born out of, just recognizing the need to connect workers throughout the South that are having the same struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's important to highlight that only 1.9% of all workers in North Carolina belong to unions. The state of New York, its union density, number of union members probably easily encompasses all the union members in all 8 southern states. That really states why we have to use a creative way of trying to organize workers in their workplaces and also in their communities to build the labor support movement that we need. I think in 2012, we were down in Charlotte with the Democratic National Convention. Obama was making his second run. And I remember that we held our first Southern Workers Assembly in a church down there. We had hundreds of workers, farm workers, immigrant workers, public sector work, all kinds of workers, you name them, they were there from all over the 8 southern states. That was needed to begin to show that, you know, we have common cause in trying to turn this picture around, change the balance of power around in our workplaces, and that we can't wait for the AFL-CIO to come up with the creative means in which to begin this class consciousness, raising the class consciousness. It's really amazing that in the most advanced capitalist nation, where class divisions are clearly shown, that there's very low class consciousness in terms of workers seeing themselves as part of being the working class, the need for workers to be unionized. I think one of the roles that the Southern Workers Assembly plays by trying to build power in the workplace, by building workplace committees, drawing workers into a bigger movement, local workers assemblies, and also making sure we build broader labor support by bringing in other unions, worker organizations, faith groups, community groups. I think then workers begin to see that we have common interest in trying to unionize the South with these creative means, since the National Labor Relations Act is not able to give us the kind of traction as you can see from the failures we had at Nissan, Volkswagen, Boeing, Amazon recently down in Bessemer, and you know, and Mercedes-Benz. All these were Southern organizing campaigns in the South.
Right.
And so there's certainly a need for building this Southern Workers Assembly, which is an alliance of workplace committees, unions, and other community groups to help us, with that organizing in the workplaces and building the broader climate of fighting for workers' rights and building unions here in the South.
Yeah. Well, thank you all both for this really, really informative first half of this podcast. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've got a short visual presentation that was put together by Manzoor Chima, who's the founding member or founder of Muslims for Social Justice and a member of the SVA family. He's put together some analysis that look at the geographies of poverty and inequality across the country and how they correlate to union density and membership. So I'm excited to share that. And then also after that, we'll watch a video about an action that was led by UE 150 and the Southern Workers Assembly to promote the Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign in North Carolina. And then we'll be joined by Sakia Royal, again, Kaya Taylor, and Rebecca Alford to continue this conversation, specifically going deeper into the frontline worker organizing that's going on right now. So I'm going to kick it over to Manzoor, and take it away.
Thank you so much. This is so powerful. Thank you once again for Southern Worker Assembly, Brother Ngaza, Sister Shakia, for your leadership. For the last 22 years, I've been working under your leadership. It's a great honor to also see Brother Saladin actually as an attendant and many, many other freedom fighters. We are students, we are learning from you all. So thank you so much. While I'm gonna give this presentation, again, that's accumulated knowledge that I learned from you all. Brother Saladin made a very important feedback that low unionization in the South has weakened the national labor movement. That's the emphasis of the South. Without, as W.B. Du Bois said, as go the South, so goes the nation. So keeping the South non-unionized is the way that whole, capitalist forces operate. This basically first picture shows union density, and you can see some of the lowest is in South Carolina, North Carolina in the country. And as Brother Ngada mentioned, the entire South has lower number of unionized workers than one state of New York. And this is a war against worker in the whole country, and I would say in the whole world. Another thing that I learned from Brother Saladin is US South has the highest foreign direct investment in the country right now. If you look at a region, it's probably one of the biggest economy in the world. The world's largest BMW plant is in South Carolina. Most of the foreign auto manufacturers are coming in the South because of the anti-union climate. But also most of the military bases are in the South. Most of the low-income workers are in the South. So it's a colony within the whole country. So I would ask to go to the next slide, please. And with this is basically, these are states that have banned collective bargaining. And you can see mostly in the US South are the states that have banned collective bargaining. This is a little bit older chart. I believe Virginia has recently changed. But in general, you can see the US South is where there's a ban on collective bargaining. And as Sister Sakia and Brother Ngada mentioned, it's also tied to Jim Crow. The first collective bargaining laws have been brought. As you can see, the map is a map of Confederacy, it's a map of Jim Crow. Which also shows a map of war against the working class people. Next slide, please. And then this is another depiction basically showing the low income poverty as by the US Census Bureau. And basically you can again see the states where there are less union, obviously there is even higher poverty. And again, these are cyclical relationships. These are from historically the US South, Confederate states. You can see extreme poverty, but at the same time, the same white supremacist forces have oppressed and suppressed unionization, the working class. But these laws then are promoted or exported throughout the country. The whole country is put back because of these oppressive laws and conditions in the US South. But again, a credit to UE 150, Black Worker Justice, and Southern Worker Assembly, who are building the largest working movement in the South, which is extremely important for the whole country. Next slide, please. And this is a last slide that I do want to share with you. And you can see whenever there is a lower unionization of workers, this chart starts from 1917, 11% workers were unionized. The larger the share of income of the top 10% or top 1%, as we say now. And you can see around 40s to 60s, 70s, there were relatively higher unionization. So the wealth of the top 10% also declined. But today, nationally it's 11%, but as Brother Ngada was saying, in North Carolina, it's about 2%. Or 1.9%, you can see astronomical rise in inequality. And there is so much more discussion we can have in the future, but it's not just inequality, it's also voting rights. It's also attacks on Black, Brown, Muslim, LGBTQ community. Everything is tied to inequality. The forces of capitalism will always create division, divide and conquer between the people. And if we want to eliminate all of these oppressions, we have to build a working class movement, and especially a working movement led by Black and Brown people. So that's all from me. I thought to provide context. Thank you so much all for joining. And I think we need to play a video now, if I'm correct.
Hazard pay!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Safe jobs!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Safe jobs!
When do we want it?
Now!
All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Manzoor. Thank you so much, Manzoor, for that slideshow and the video. Bo, thank you for playing that. Let's get right into it. The Kia Royal, president of the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, UE 150, food service assistant at O'Berry Center in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Welcome back. We also want to welcome to this part of the panel, Rebecca Gross-Alford, who is a registered nurse in interventional radiology at Mission Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina, and a member of the National Nurses Organizing Committee. Welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. Do we got Rebecca up? While we're waiting for Rebecca to come up, let's go ahead and Sakia, let's get started. So for those who don't know, can you tell us about UE 150? What what is the UE 150's history? What does it who does it represent? And then also related to that, talk to us about what is the GS 9598? What is it and how did it come to be?
Okay, well, thank you again. And so UE 150, we are a public service workers union here in the state of North Carolina. We represent workers, city workers, Department of Health and Human Service, DHHS workers. We represent private workers, university workers here across the state of North Carolina. And I'm sure Mr. Ngazi would like to jump in because he is one of the founding members of our UE 150. But basically, the UE 150 started back in the early 90s, loosely a loose network of Black workers that were organized by the Black Workers for Justice. And around 1999, a group of women housekeepers, mostly Black women housekeepers, at Chapel Hill University, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, was one of their first groups to organize. And they organized DHHS in 2001, and it wasn't until 2006, after the sanitation worker strike, is when UE 150 joined the national UE group and became a official union. So, like I said, it stems back from the early 90s with organizational work from Black Workers for Justice that really pretty much got it started. GS 9598 is the ban on collective bargaining. We have been we work on all campaigns we work on. It consists of working to get the ban on collective bargaining lifted. They put a ban on collective bargaining around 1959, I guess, in the height of the civil rights era, when Black people were gaining some power and momentum here in the South. And so, worker organizations were teaming together with Black and, some Black and some white, I guess, workers, so they seen the political power that I guess that could possibly happen with Black workers and the rise of our movement. And so around 1959 is when they put the ban on collective bargaining, which is our right for workers to sit at the table with the bosses to, talk about the demands and the workers' needs.
That's really interesting. I have a quick follow-up for you, and then we're going to jump over to Rebecca. Rebecca, it's good to see you. I know that there's a long history of both formal and informal formations and in addition to those formations, resistance to Jim Crow in the U.S. South in particular. I want to know what you think, what your ideas are about the connection between Jim Crow and the GS 9598.
Well, like I was saying before, I believe they put that ban in place at that pivotal time in history to stop the workers' power. They didn't want workers to have a political power in the workplaces, in the communities. And so, with the Jim Crow oppression for Black workers across the South, that pretty much, I feel like, is the reason why they put that into place in the time that they did.
Yeah, that's right. Right on. Rebecca, how you doing today?
Hi, good. Sorry, I'm not very technically savvy, so.
It's just fine. You're doing just fine. Can you tell us a little bit about the organizing you and your coworkers have been doing at Mission Hospital, and in particular, the collective actions y'all have been doing or taking around fighting for COVID protections there? And for those folks that might not know, maybe you can also share a bit about the historic union victory that you had out there in 2020 when you won your union as well.
Yes, I think we're the first nurses union in North Carolina. Healthcare has traditionally been a very difficult area in the South, I think, and anywhere to unionize. We're traditionally mostly female, and so we're, culturally conditioned not to unionize because we're all codependent. But we, after a lot of hard work by people other than myself, we did win a really great margin to unionize. I think a lot of that had to do with the working conditions after we were bought out by a for-profit healthcare. And that kind of overrode a lot of the concerns that people had. We have made some great changes. Let me preface this by saying I moved here 2 years ago from Atlanta. I worked in occupational health for 13 years. I stopped that in 2011. At that point, we used N95 masks. That was part of my job, was fit testing nurses for N95 masks. And we used those for single use. 2011, when I left, you could use them for the same. If you were my patient, I could use that for you in your room for up to 8 hours as long as it stayed dry. But I never took that mask and used it on another patient. This was 10 years ago.
Wow.
When HCA took over and we started with COVID, we were told to use those masks and store them in a paper bag for an entire couple of days, a week. Actually, I think it was up to a week. One of the major battles the union fought and won for the safety of healthcare workers was to stop that, to have a new mask every day. We still want to strive back to the single use where we were 10 years ago. But huge battle, because there are HCA hospitals that are still telling healthcare workers they have to store their N95 masks in paper bags for several days. It's not just a safety issue for the healthcare worker, it's a safety issue for the patients. So that's a huge right we've won. And things like just, breaks, safe staffing. These are ongoing battles. Unionizing is a frustrating thing because they're contracts that they're not adhering to, but we still have had some major victories, like getting them to pay the nurses who have been exposed to and test positive, not having to take their own vacation time when they've tested positive and been taken out of work. So, we have made some great strides, even though it's slow going. It's frustrating at times. I'll say, and it's been very enlightening listening to people. And I think one of the major challenges with healthcare is that even as liberal as an area like Asheville is, it's still pretty vanilla here. So whereas a lot of minority people understand you're oppressed, we're still a majority, but that's changing, female. And a lot of us don't understand we're oppressed and buy into this narrative of you're being protected by the system. And a lot of the rhetoric that was used by management when we were trying to unionize was really sounded a lot like the things that I would point out to coworkers. This is what abusive spouses say. Only we will take care of you, only we love you enough, and nobody really else wants you. And so trying to point to those really dysfunctional arguments that management was making by people who feel they're safe in the system, and to point out that, you too, not to the extent that a lot of people of color are, but you too are being oppressed. And I would tell my coworkers, read the labor laws in North Carolina. You have no rights. You're voicing, if they do this, I'm not going to do that. Well, go read your labor laws. You have a right. You have no rights to do anything. Also buying into that, it's socialism and we're going to be communist, and then, just having to fight against those type of prejudice. I think that truly the fear mongering. Another great accomplishment that the union did was to extend the Emergency Act to extend the safety precautions in the state of North Carolina, where a lot of states have already ended those. We're extended through February, and hopefully we can extend them longer. And that's protecting, again, if you're out of work, not having to use your own vacation time, because we still have, our numbers go up and down, and they just dropped the mask mandates. So who knows where that's going to be.
Yeah.
So we
So-
have made some great accomplishments.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good to hear in terms of the accomplishments, and really congratulations on all on the wins. I know you all have been in a labor coalition, right, to talk to the North Carolina Labor Commissioner Josh Dobson about the emergency temporary standard, extending it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, two nurses have met with him, or two healthcare workers, twice now. Apparently his predecessor was not interested in meeting with anybody from healthcare union representatives, and he has listened, and we hope he'll continue to listen, and was instrumental in helping extend that. So versus shutting it. So I don't know a lot of the details because I'm fairly new coming into that, but at least we have his ear and he's paid attention. We've been trying to be very public, holding press conferences and standing on the corner of the hospital to bring attention with placards and other things to let the public know that things that are happening are not safe. And so we're trying to be as visible as we can, pitting people when they walk in the hospital, employees and visitors, to let them know that these things are still going on.
Yeah, right on. Thank you so much. We're gonna. I got one more question. This is actually for Sakia. So real quick, Sakia, can you tell us about the Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign?
Absolutely. So back into 2019, when the pandemic first hit, one of the second people in here in the state of North Carolina to pass away was a city worker in the Raleigh area. And, a lot of our workers were concerned. People were confused and unsure about this pandemic. And so along with Southern Workers Assembly, UE 150 launched our Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign, the first round of our campaign. Like I said, back in 2019, we launched it on April 3rd, the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign was basically, we bound together throughout the state, demanding our bosses and our workplaces to protect us from this pandemic. In that campaign, we submitted letters to our representatives for as far as DHHS and city managers. We did campaigns. We were demanding COVID pay, safety, protect PPE equipment. It was for our drivers in the cities, and for our city workers. We were requesting that that they provide sanitation equipment to properly clean the vehicles, and staggered schedules, and so that there would only be one person, riding the vehicles. It was a lot of different safety and hazard pay and different things like that we were demanding from our workplaces, just depending on what your workplace was, what, that met, your individualized demands. And so, like I said, we did rallies, we sent petitions. I mean, it was great. And a lot of in our cities, we forced those city managers to pay our city workers hazard pay, DHHS, the universities. So it was definitely around the COVID-19 outbreak. And so again, when the numbers started rising again, we relaunched our campaign across the whole state of North Carolina. Again, on this past February 16th on a Wednesday, and that was the slideshow that you've seen of some of our workplaces, campaigning again for hazard pay, safe staffing levels, transparency on numbers and who's, sick in the hospital. And so, like I said, we've been, and that actually the Safe Jobs Save Lives campaign was not only in North Carolina, but it was across the entire southern states.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Sakia and Rebecca. We really appreciate you both taking the time out to talk with us today. We're gonna go. Yeah, for sure. We'll have a moment at the end where we'll get last remarks from everybody as well. So looking forward to that too. I want to move to Kaya. I'm excited to welcome our last guest, Kaya Taylor, who is an Amazon worker and organizing fellow with the Southern Workers Assembly and a grad student at American University, also co-chair of the Housing Working Group in the Triangle chapter of DSA. So first, just jumping in, what's it like working at Amazon?
So I worked at Amazon for a combination of 2 years. I worked in the beginning in between college, summer breaks, and then I came back after the pandemic because it was hard to find a job. And so I've been working there for a year. And luckily I only work at a sort center, which most people don't know about, which is different in that it's not as big as the fulfillment centers that you typically see when people do reports on Amazon, but we basically are part-time workers and they pay you part-time, basically hours. The only benefit you get is dental, which is decent, but we only get that benefit. And our shifts are we don't really have a steady schedule in the fact that we can work anywhere between 3 to 5 hours per shift, and you never know when that shift is going to end. They might tell you at the beginning it's supposed to end in 4 hours, and then they can just change it in the middle or close to the end of the shift to be 5 hours. You just don't know. Right now we've been working consistently 3 hours every single shift. So people's pay has basically been cut and we can't do anything about that part. But we've been doing me and another guy at this facility, as well as some other people in another facility that is a fulfillment center for Amazon, have been doing some really good organizing work in the workplace and trying to get Amazon more organized in the Carolina area, and basically trying to start that process from the ground up, and be very strategic and not be too quick in the things that we do, because we know that taking on Amazon is a big deal, especially with Bessemer and Alabama previously doing that as well.
Mm-hmm. So, here's a quick follow-up. How can people be a part of workers' assemblies, and if there isn't one in their area, right? How can we get one started? How can you get one started?
I didn't know about workers' assemblies until the Southern Workers Assembly here happened to do a rally. I think it had to deal with the Save Jobs, Save Lives campaign, and they did one in front of the Amazon that I work at. So I didn't know about them. Typically you can find your Southern Workers Assembly if you go on the Southern Workers Assembly website and join as a member, and somebody will contact you and either connect you or help you in that process. Basically, I'm a part of both the Durham and Raleigh Workers Assemblies. So most of the most of Durham's workers assembly is made up of UE 150 workers, as well as the We Dream in Black group organization and the National Domestic Workers Union organization.
Mhm.
And basically like working with those people, as well as we've had now people from Amazon joining who are not organized but are trying to be in that process. And basically the Southern Workers Assembly has been able to help them with that process in training them in how to do that process of organizing and petitioning and such. So
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm gonna move to the question and answer part of this, and then bring everybody back for a chance for a last comment. But in order to do that, I'm gonna hand this back over to Manzoor to help guide us to the question and answer. Manzoor, take it away. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you all for once again joining. Please add your question in the chat section, or raise your hand, and we will try to unmute you. Actually, I'm not sure that feature is there. So the only feature are you can add it in the chat section, or you can add it in the Q&A section. But I will take the opportunity to ask a question, actually. Thank you so much, Sakia. Thank you, Kaya, and everyone for joining. One very important question is about the safety condition in working place. There have been stories that people have died, workers have died at workplace. I believe at Amazon it has happened. I believe there were fire in Fayetteville Valley Protein. So I guess it's a question for all of you to please let us know about the conditions of working people in the COVID-19 and what. So please, yeah, that's my question.
I guess I could start with Amazon. So I joined, like I started working again at Amazon in October of 2020, and it was right after they ended hazard pay. So Amazon workers before were getting an extra $2 as hazard pay on to their hourly rate. And like right when I joined was when they ended it. Even though the pandemic was still going on, they ended that hazard pay. And when Omicron came, Delta and Omicron came, they never gave us that hazard pay back. And one of the many issues that we had and continue to have is that they don't do consistent contact tracing or even attempt to. They will tell you, they'll notify the whole building that they have that somebody in the building has COVID, but they won't tell you what department they're in. They may tell you when was the last time they were in the building, but that building is big, so you don't know if you've had contact with that person or not, and they don't really tell you. And there was a person in Raleigh, Amazon worker in Raleigh, that I think a couple of weeks ago, that recently died from COVID, and they don't really tell you this person died from COVID, or this person has COVID in your department, so you should go get tested. They don't tell you that. So we don't have any solid contact tracing. And even when you ask, they say, well, we don't have the logins of the people that you were with, so we can't contact trace, which is an excuse, basically. So that's been a major issue for us because we can't really contain the spread within our own buildings.
Thank you so much. This is really powerful. I also see Rebecca's hand up, so please go ahead, I believe, on this topic. And you have to unmute it.
Yes, I just found out recently from one of our union rep meetings that we have to maintain a log. So employees, because of contact tracing, people who had COVID, so you can go look and see if you've been recorded in your log, but actually contact tracing is still a problem because people have said they have not been informed. Also, just general room hygiene is a real problem. I work in interventional radiology, so we're not, stuck on a COVID floor, but we go up to pick up these patients and the procedures. There's no soap in the room. The contact gowns are just thrown onto the floor because they don't have the bags, or the person to come and put the bags in the room for the employees to have a place to store the contaminated gowns, and just the lack of staffing. And for hazard pay, the nurses who were promised that they would have hazard pay that work on these floors never got it. So it's things our union are dealing with, but it's just, pathetic the way they treat the people who are exposed and are taking care of the patients.
Thank you so much. And I want to put that question also. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Kaya, to Sakia and Brother in Gaza. Worker conditions at your workplace. Yeah. If you can do that.
Well, UE represents lots of different types of workplaces. We have, city workers and house, hospital workers, so the conditions vary, but like I said, when we first kicked off the Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign, a lot of our workplaces didn't have any type of precautions into place. One of the second people to die in the state was a city worker. They were not providing any type of mask, any type of PPE. Our workers in the hospitals, the numbers were rising the fastest in the healthcare. Dying, we had a housekeeper die early on. And so after we launched our Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign, and forced workplaces to provide us with PPE and hazard pay through the first part of the pandemic, they did so hesitantly. Some of our workplaces still never really got compensated or the proper PPE. And so fast forwarding through the pandemic, as everything started relaxing, so did the PPE money. So did the PPE protocols. We've seen a lot of workplaces slacking on making people wear masks and things like that. They took our hazard pay away about 8-9 months into the pandemic. And so, like I said, they started providing and started doing better with workplaces, but as the pandemic went on, they slacked off. And so that's why we started our Safe Jobs, Save Lives campaign, because the pandemic is not over.
Definitely, so important. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass to Brother in Gaza about the safety at the workplace and what challenges workers face.
Yes, as Sakia stated, that the challenges that we face as workers vary, since UE has both private sector workers that work at Rocky Mount Engine Plant, and also we have some new organizing efforts going on at the Valley Protein meat rendering plant. So it varied. But one thing for certain, that wherever we were trying to build workers' power, put the rubber to the road, where the workers were inside the workplace making the challenges, we made progress. We circulated petitions at Valley Protein. We circulated petitions where I worked downtown in Department of Administration. I'm a state government employee. And whether it was the workers collecting signatures and petitions at Lewiston, up in Lewiston or Fayetteville or wherever they were, wherever workers were building power, engaging the workers, challenging the workers, challenging management. That's where we made the progress with either the cleaning of vehicles and workplaces, getting gloves, getting temperature checks. But at the same time, as we were organizing power in the workplace, we were trying to do some political education so that we can make a challenge also outside the workplace, holding elected officials accountable, particularly the meetings that we held with the Commissioner of Labor, Dobson. I want to just thank all of those who've been engaged in that broad coalition. I think at once we had 54 different folks on a call with Dobson. Sakia obviously doing a great job representing many of the workplaces for our union, UE Local 150, but also Valley Protein, since there have been deaths there, not just from occupational accidents, but also from the COVID. So we understood that we had to build power inside the workplace, but also rally other folks into a coalition to put pressure on local elected officials, I know in Fayetteville, we had a commemoration for the death of 2 workers. We mobilized city council members from Fayetteville. We mobilized county commissioners. We mobilized some legislators from the state legislature to the commemoration. So we were trying, and also we mobilized community organizations to demand that there be accountability for these conditions and the deaths of these workers. And I think that was very important, that we begin to broaden the workers' thinking that this is not just a workplace challenge that we got to build inside as we build power, but also we got to build broader alliances in terms of community labor support to begin to put pressure on the system, on the state, on the governments to be held accountable for these poor conditions that they allow to exist.
Definitely. No, these are really important. Again, to really show people what is happening, and workers are basically in this economy, really at the risk of dying even. And this was the core of the campaign, Safe Job, Save Life. We have a wonderful question from Brother Saladin, from Jonah, from Kenneth. So I'll go one by one. Brother Saladin asked a really important question. Looking at building workers' power in the South, is the critical role the US and international economy plays considered when we think about strategies and alignment? Again, it's a broader question. So whoever wants to take that, when we are building workers' power in the South, do we consider the critical role US and international economy plays as we are building the movement? So whoever wants to take.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that the South has become a major place for major multinational corporations, global corporations to come to, because they do know of the low level of unionization and the low level of workers' power and workers' consciousness, because there has never been or hasn't been a very strong working class movement or workers' movement or labor movement, a broad labor movement for the Southern region. I think this is the importance and mission of the Southern Workers Assembly, to begin to build the foundation and the pillars for such a movement. But many of us don't understand that the second largest financial center of the US is right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's the second largest financial center for all of the US. Many folks don't know that we have many global corporations that have made their headquarters right here in North Carolina, between Charlotte and the Research Triangle Park. This begins to speak to some of the questions that Brother Saladin has raised about the importance of building a very solid Southern Workers Assembly, a Southern Workers Movement, a Southern Workers Congress that we need to begin to strategically assess and map out the tactics that we need to make the kind of change that we need to fundamentally turn this thing around. And it's going to take more than just what we have available. It's going to take everybody who's on this webinar to play some role, whether it's supporting one of the workers' assembly areas in your area, or whether it's identifying a workplace or workplaces where we can begin to recruit workers and build other workers' assemblies. This is going to be an essential political move that we're going to have to move towards in this period right now. As Saladin stated, this is a lot broader than just what's happening in North Carolina or the South. There's been over 46 union strikes in the last 12 months. Catalogs, John Deere, I can name a whole host of them, including the mine workers down in Birmingham, Alabama. There's a movement developing, there's a crisis ahead of us, and it's essential that we try to build this class consciousness about building power in the workplace and building the kind of working class movement that we need to impact, just not locally or nationally, but internationally, since many of these global corporations like Amazon, don't forget it's global, really need to feel the might and power of organized workers in a movement. And it will hopefully be, centered around the South, since a large number of those oppressed workers, immigrants, Black workers, I think 58% of all Black folk live right here in the Southern region. This is critically important.
Definitely, definitely. This is really great. And I'm going to actually go unless people want to answer, but if not, I will go to the next question and with the limit time. This is a great question from Jonah, director at NOCAP, a youth-led movement. His question is, youth are new to organizing and are excited about being involved in these movements. What are some good resources and trainings that youth can be involved with to continue building power? So are there any resources for the youth to join the worker-led movement?
I guess like for me being new in this process, I've definitely been able to like connect with the Southern Workers Assembly, like their whole because we have local chapters as well as the whole branch of the Southern Workers Assembly. And the Southern Workers Assembly does a lot of like educational trainings on how to do build worker power and organizing the workplace, the importance of building cadre in the workplace when you're trying to organize. And those resources are usually those were like the starting grounds that I found important in basically that process of training and getting to understand it more.
Thank you so much. Again, if anybody wants to join, please raise your hand. Otherwise I can move to the next one. The last question is Kenneth Morgan. Again, a very important question. How do you deal with racism among Black and white workers? Again, a tactic of the capitalist forces, divide and conquer. So how do we deal with racism between Black and white, or how they pit Black and white workers? Anybody who wants to take that important question?
I think it's very important that Black workers in these workplaces see the importance of their being very well organized. I think they have to be first and foremost. Black, oppressed nationalities, they have to come together to take the lead to win white workers, or at least educate white workers to the long history of systemic racism and that racist national oppression of people, Black and people of color. We have to take the lead in doing that. I know one of the roles that Black Workers for Justice has played, that's Ngaza Samora. They call him Ngaza 2.0. And Nathanette is they've been doing workshops and films at the Fruit of Labor World Cultural Center, particularly during Black History Month. We had 3 young Black workers, they were in their 20s. I didn't know that you had such a large number of young people, Sister Kaya, at Amazon, until they shared with me. A large number of those workers are in their 20s, early 20s. And I met some of them. Brother Anthony, who is on our Amazonian Workplace Committee. And for him to come over and say, man, you got books and films on this stuff. And really, he already knows, he ate it up, him and a couple others. But we need to create activities, whether it's with films, books, brochures, and other workshops. Because he said that the music and culture is the main thing that young workers talk about. So the question becomes, and we learned this from one of our great founders of Black Workers for Justice, we call them Baba Sufu, AKA Abner Berry. He taught us that we have to figure out ways to use culture to educate and inspire people to step forward. So I do know this coming Saturday, Ngaza Samora and Basi and some other Black Workers for Justice members will be, using culture and music at that fish fry, just to get their ear before they show this film they're going to show, and they're going to have a discussion. And as you know, we're going to report on what's been happening in some of the workplaces in the area. So we got to find interesting and creative ways to engage young people.
Thank you so much. This is really great. I really appreciate it, all of your questions. I'm gonna move forward to Josh. Thank you once again. That was a powerful Q&A section.
Yeah, I want to just take a second just to open it up for any concluding words or any announcements that you all have. I know, Ngaza, you talked about the fish fry. I don't know if you want to have a more formal announcement around that, but just a real quick kind of 30-second, 15 to 30-second kind of last statements or announcements that y'all want to make about things that are coming up that you're working on, or what you want to highlight about your work. Let's start with Kaya.
Well, I know the Southern Workers Assembly is working on building a Southern, basically Amazon Council, and with my internship with the Southern Workers Assembly, I've been focusing on Amazons in the area, and luckily been able to like work with organizing a workplace committee within the two facilities. And so, but we're doing one for all of the Amazons in the South. So if anybody is interested in that, you can let me know. I'll leave my email in the chat. And we always need more people to help in this action, because having a few can cause a lot of burnout, and having more people to spread the work over is also more powerful. So
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. Rebecca, we're going around the horn here on baseball terms.
And I'm sorry, I wear hearing aids, so I didn't quite hear what you were asking.
Oh, no, it's just concluding statements, closing statements, or any announcements that you had that on work that y'all work on.
Well, we're in the process of filing grievances for people who have actually their PTO has been used to cover them for a while they're out with COVID, even though they're not supposed to be. We also have a professional practice committee, which is meets with management to hold them accountable for the maintaining our contract. We're continuing to do things like in solidarity the other day when we had our press conference with other groups around the state, that just to work together to bring attention to what's happening. And I just want to say, as far as the racial relationships between, I think it's as Caucasians, we can't speak for anybody, but I think when we hear things happening, we have a responsibility to stand and say that's not acceptable. And I think for too long, we turn our heads and we, stay quiet, or we don't want to offend somebody that's maybe our friend. When we hear things that maybe we don't personally agree with, or we think are wrong, that we have to quit doing that. And that we have to stand together for what's just morally right. And that's something we have to apologize for and to move forward and stop it.
Thanks. All right, it's moving around the horn. Angaza, thank you.
Yeah, we just want to invite all of you and your friends and allies to help us continue to build the Southern Workers Assembly. If you know of any workplaces where you're getting a lot of that's on fire and the workers are responding that they want to organize or they want to do something about their conditions, please put them in touch with any of us from the Southern Workers Assembly. Sister Kaya just gave you an email. Please call us. And if you know folks that want to help us leaflet a particular workplace, particularly one of these workplaces where they got these criminal bosses and the workers are on fire, they want to organize. Again, please call us and let us know that you're interested in flyering or joining one of our flyering brigades. And finally, would like you all, since there'll be many Amazon workers coming out to this fish fry, we'd like you to meet them on Saturday. I know some of the leaders have said they're coming, they're bringing their wives and their families. We're going to be meeting at the Fruit of Labor World Cultural Center, 4200 Lake Ridge Drive, this coming Saturday at 2 p.m. We'll guarantee you that the fish dinners will run out. These are big plates. We have a garden on the side of the center. There'll be some mac and cheese.
What city again? You give the full address?
Carolina. If you're in the area, stop by, meet some of the Amazon workers, and also be there to check this flick out. And we're going to have political discussion and reports from some of the workplaces, as we usually do. At 42 Lake Ridge in Raleigh.
Great. All right, and closing us out here, Sakil, talk to us. What you got going on?
Well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to sit on this panel and speak with everyone about the work that the Southern Workers Assembly and UE 150 is working on this year. Right now, UE 150, let's see, our city workers, they're starting about a bunch of budget campaigns and negotiating, with the city managers on, pay and different things like that. So they have budget meetings and things going on with the cities. DHHS is gearing up to meet with the head of DHHS, Cody Kinsley, and his assistant, Jonathan Kapler. We have a quarterly meet and greets with them, meet and confers with the DHHS management. And here during COVID, we've been meeting with them a little more regularly, engaging and telling them about what the workers need here in DHHS. So we have an upcoming meeting with him. May starts our political action week, and so we will be doing some voter registration and different things like that in the community leading up to our political action week starting in May 1st. So we have a lot of exciting things going on at UE 150.
I'm on mute. That's super exciting, incredibly exciting. Finally, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out and hopping on this panel today, being a part of this webinar podcast. Again, this is the second installment of our Southern Vision series. Really, really significantly appreciate all of you all's time and helping to curate this moment for this month. We want to ask all of you all to kind of keep an eye out on what we got coming up next month in March. Join us as we're going to be celebrating International Working Women's Day, and we're going to be digging deeper into the widespread attacks on reproductive justice and Roe versus Wade. And so that's going to be another exciting month. And then following that, we'll do another in April, working with BWFJ, Black Workers for Justice, commemoration for their anniversary. And so we've got some really exciting conversations planned up for what we're trying to do. And it leads us to a lot of the other exciting work that Southern Vision Alliance is working on. And so with that said, coming up soon, in last October, we began the process of building out our very own People's Solidarity Hub building and began construction on our internal parts of the building. In large part in support of from support of the community, right? So we're finally finished with the construction. I don't know if a picture's going to pop up here, but we're finally finished with the construction, and we're building out, putting together furniture now, and it looks like we're going to be opening this spring our People's Solidarity Hub in Durham. Folks, Jen Skees, who's the Solidarity Hub's coordinator, and other staff and other folks, volunteers, have been working really hard at getting the building together so it can be useful for everything from popular education, workshops, team retreats, film screenings, etc. So with that said, feel free to reach out to us or to Jen, actually, at Jen@Southern Vision. If you have any, Jen@southernvision.org. If you have any ideas of how you'd like to use the space coming up this spring, here's a kind of quick snapshot of the visual. Externally, is now a very vibrant teal, aqua bluish color, which is exciting for the city of Durham. So yeah, feel free to email Jen again at jen@southernvision.org if you're interested in trying to figure out how to use the space. It is located in the historic neighborhood of Lakewood in Durham. So if you're familiar with that area, it is the community that we intend to serve with that building. And so we look forward to being able to offer up not just our services as a grassroots intermediary, but as we acquire spaces and facilities, thinking about how our people going forward in this movement are going to need spaces to be able to organize and strategize around resistance in these movements and the resistance to this oppression and fascism that is rapidly approaching us. Another quick announcement, we have our Carolina Youth Power Fund. Carolina Youth Power Fund right now is offering grants of up to $1,000 to youth-led organizations or organizations that support youth leadership. So if your organization or you're supporting youth leadership that is organizing for student power on campuses, if they're hosting events to inspire revolutionary change, if they're gathering young people for healing justice work or reflection, please email wesley@southernvision.org. Again, that's Wesley, Wesley @southernvision.org. And so finally, we are really excited about this webinar podcast that we've designed for the entire year. And a lot of this would not be possible without the support for resources that we're trying to put together. We want to build out a whole podcast studio inside of SVA offices that we have, but in order to do that, we want to try to raise some resources. Any amount would support us, and if you have any amount of the means, please feel free to contribute to SVA. There should be a link in the chat here. Also visit the website for this particular webinar episode. That'll have a link to the videos and how to get in touch with our guest. And I guess kind of finally wrapping up here for real. We are entering 2022 amidst a lot of challenges. If you watched the news recently, you know lots of things are coming up. As people, we are facing increased precarity and a rise in the fascist and racist forces, and an absolute failure to address climate disruption, as well as escalating attacks on women's rights, LGBTQ rights, migrants, and refugees, and all working class people. We've seen it, across not just the United States, but the entire Western world. Has been squeezing the necks and squeezing the people significantly. And so more than ever, it is important to gather our forces to carefully discuss and act upon strategies to build a stronger movement for transformation and liberation. And so we ask that, as we gather these spaces, we're not always perfect in how we gather, but the intentions are there to make sure that we do stand in solidarity with each other. At SVA, we believe solidarity as a verb. And so with that, I want to say thank you all for joining us. If you tuned in on the live stream and not the webinar, please go to the website to sign up for the future webinars. That's www.southernvision.org. Again, www.southernvision.org. All right, thank you all so much for taking the time this evening to join us for this conversation. And before I get out of here, I want to also say a very, very special thanks to the folks on the back end of this podcast webinar that helped make sure everything moved right digitally. Bo and Ben and the other communications teams, Jason, Alejandro, I don't know why I want to say Jason, Alejandro, and other folks from the staff of SVA that have been a part of this to help make this happen. Thank you all so much, and have a great night.